He worked until 4 a.m. to save his company's biggest project while holding his feverish 6-year-old daughter. His reward? A brutal public termination the very next morning for disloyalty. But the absolute destruction this single father brought upon his toxic boss will leave you completely speechless. Imagine the sound of your entire life collapsing. It doesn't happen with a deafening explosion. It happens in the suffocating, freezing silence of a corporate office on a random Tuesday morning. Picture a slightly worn cardboard box resting on a cold, sterile desk. A man stands over it, his hands trembling so violently he can barely hold the framed photograph of his smiling 6-year-old daughter. He carefully places it at the bottom of the box, his heart completely and utterly pulverized. Around him, 30 colleagues sit frozen in a deafening, cowardly silence, staring at their monitors, too terrified to even make eye contact. He has just been publicly executed, stripped of his livelihood, his dignity, and his ability to protect his child, all in front of the very people he spent years supporting. You are probably wondering what horrific crime this man committed to deserve such a brutal, humiliating corporate slaughter. The truth will make your blood run cold, and I promise you, by the end of this story, you will question everything you thought you knew about loyalty and sacrifice. When Home Hurts 2 warmly welcomes you to another journey into the darkest, most hidden corners of the modern workplace. Before we uncover the terrifying truth of what brought this devoted father to his absolute breaking point, please hit that subscribe button to support the channel and give us the motivation to keep exposing these vital stories that corporations desperately want to keep buried. Now, let me ask you to look deep into the mirror of your own professional life for a moment. What is the actual definition of dedication? Is it rotting in an office chair until 8 p.m., playing a toxic game of FaceTime just to be seen by the right executives? Or is it delivering absolute, breathtaking excellence in the shadows and leaving at precisely 5 p.m. because you have a little girl waiting for you at the school gates? To understand the sheer injustice of that cardboard box, we have to rewind to 5:30 a.m. that very same morning. In a small, dimly lit apartment, the heavy ghost of a sudden illness still lingers. Ethan Brooks lost his wife 2 years ago, but he does not have the luxury of drowning in that freezing, bottomless grief because in the next room sleeps his daughter, Lily. Society loves to discuss the struggles of working parents, but we constantly turn a blind eye to the suffocating panic of the single working parent. Watch him in the quiet dark of the kitchen. He is ironing a tiny school uniform, packing a lunchbox with a meticulously written note of encouragement, and simultaneously running Q3 financial projections in his mind. He carries an invisible, staggering burden that would crush most executives. Because if Ethan fails, he doesn't just lose a fancy title. Lily loses her home and her future. People like Ethan have no safety net, so they swallow their exhaustion, push their severe anxiety deep down into their chests, and perform with a profound, quiet integrity. Yet in the cruel theater of the modern corporate world, this desperate, silent dedication is the exact weapon bloodthirsty managers use to destroy them. To comprehend how such a quiet, unyielding dedication could be twisted into a fireable offense, we must step into the viper's nest that Ethan walked into every single morning. The company Ethan worked for did not value actual productivity. It worshipped at the altar of the hustle culture, a toxic theater of exhaustion where your worth was measured strictly by how visibly you suffered for the firm. At the absolute center of this masquerade was his department director, a man named Marcus. Marcus was the kind of modern corporate predator who viewed personal boundaries as a direct insult to his authority. He was a man who sent emails at 2 a.m. not because they were urgent, but simply to see who was terrified enough to reply within 5 minutes. For Marcus, management was not about leadership. It was about ownership. Ethan, by his very nature, was a direct threat to this entire illusion. Because Ethan had a hard stop at 5 p.m. to pick up Lily from after-school care, he could not participate in the performative overtime that the rest of the floor engaged in. Instead, Ethan did something far more dangerous. He worked with lethal, uninterrupted efficiency. He didn't take an hour for lunch. He didn't gossip by the espresso machine. And he didn't attend optional networking mixers that drained hours from the day. He simply produced flawless, high-level financial analyses, often doing the work of 3 men in the span of 8 hours. You would assume a company would kill to have an employee like this, but competence without submission terrifies a weak manager. Marcus despised Ethan. He despised that Ethan did not linger by his office door begging for validation.
He despised that no matter how much work he dumped on Ethan's desk at 4:30 p.m., Ethan would calmly prioritize it, execute what was critical, and walk out the door at 5 p.m. on the dot. To Marcus, Ethan's boundaries were an act of blatant insubordination, a silent reminder that the company did not own his soul. The director began a subtle, systematic campaign of sabotage, leaving Ethan off crucial calendar invites, misplacing his submitted reports, and openly mocking his early departures in front of the younger, more impressionable staff. Ethan endured these daily humiliations in absolute silence, swallowing his pride because the image of his daughter's face kept him anchored to reality. But a predator never stops at mere humiliation, and Marcus was simply biding his time, waiting for the perfect moment of vulnerability to strike the fatal blow. The friction between Ethan's invisible efficiency and Marcus's loud tyranny was a powder keg waiting for a spark. And that spark arrived in the dead of winter in the form of a 103-degree fever. It was the final Thursday of the quarter, the most chaotic week of the year, and the department was tasked with finalizing a massive merger forecast that Marcus had grossly mismanaged for months. Predictably, Marcus had dumped the bulk of the disorganized data onto Ethan's desk just 24 hours before the absolute deadline. Ethan was prepared to perform a miracle, quietly mapping out the financial models when his phone vibrated. It was the school nurse. Lily was burning up with a severe fever, shivering uncontrollably and asking for her dad. In that singular, terrifying second, the corporate illusion shatters and only biological reality remains. Ethan stood up, grabbed his coat, and walked straight to Marcus's glass office to inform him of the emergency. He did not ask for permission. He stated a fact. He promised Marcus that he would take his laptop, care for his daughter, and have the finalized merger report in Marcus's inbox before the sun came up. Marcus's face hardened into a mask of pure, unadulterated contempt. He leaned back in his leather chair and told Ethan that if he walked out that door during a critical sprint, he was abandoning his team and proving he lacked the commitment required for his role. The threat hung in the heavy, conditioned air, sharp and undisguised. But Marcus deeply misunderstood the psychology of a fiercely devoted parent. Ethan did not even blink. He looked his manager dead in the eye, turned on his heel, and walked out. The next 14 hours were a blur of absolute agony. Ethan sat on the floor of his bathroom, holding a cold, wet washcloth to his daughter's burning forehead with one hand, while balancing his glowing laptop on his knees with the other. He worked through the agonizing midnight hours, pushing his exhausted brain through complex financial algorithms while whispering soothing words to the crying child leaning against his chest. By 4:15 a.m., Lily's fever finally broke, and her breathing slowed into a peaceful, rhythmic sleep. 10 minutes later, Ethan hit send on a perfectly compiled, impeccably formatted 40-page forecast. He had done the impossible. He had saved the company's crucial merger, and he had protected his little girl. He leaned his head against the bathroom tiles, completely drained, naively believing he had survived the storm. You would think that delivering a masterpiece while nursing a sick child in the dead of night would earn a man a medal. But in the corporate slaughterhouse, a bruised ego is far deadlier than a missed deadline. Over the weekend, the executive board reviewed Ethan's financial forecast and praised it as one of the most comprehensive models the firm had ever seen. Marcus, naturally, accepted the praise on behalf of the department, soaking in the executive glory. But behind closed doors, Marcus's rage was boiling over. Ethan's success proved that Marcus's draconian culture of FaceTime and micromanagement was entirely unnecessary. And in the corporate world, exposing a manager's uselessness is an unforgivable sin. This brings us back to that freezing Tuesday morning, the moment the world collapsed. Ethan arrived at the office early, carrying a slight sense of quiet pride, only to find an impromptu department meeting already underway in the center of the bullpen. As Ethan walked in, Marcus stopped speaking. The entire floor went dead silent. Marcus, standing tall with a look of manufactured sorrow, announced to the room that the company was making a structural change to preserve its core values of teamwork and reliability. He looked directly at Ethan and stated, in front of 30 silent peers, that Ethan's decision to abandon the office during the most critical hour of the quarter demonstrated a severe lack of loyalty that the company could no longer tolerate. Marcus didn't mention the flawless report delivered at 4 a.m. He didn't mention the sick child. He simply painted Ethan as a traitor to the corporate family. The termination was immediate, brutal, and designed to inflict maximum psychological damage. As Ethan stood there, the blood draining from his face, he looked around at the colleagues he had covered for, the juniors he had mentored, the people whose mistakes he had quietly fixed for years. Not a single person spoke. They stared at their keyboards, complicit in their cowardice, terrified that speaking up would put them next on the chopping block. Security guards were summoned, not because Ethan was a threat, but to complete the humiliation. This is how we arrived at that slightly worn cardboard box. As Ethan gently packed his daughter's framed photograph, his hands shaking with the terror of an uncertain future, he realized the horrifying truth of his existence. He had sacrificed his sleep, his health, and his peace of mind to build a fortress for a company that threw him to the wolves the moment he prioritized his own flesh and blood. He was escorted out through the glass doors, treated like a criminal for the crime of being a father first. Walking out of those heavy glass doors with his entire life confined to a cardboard box, Ethan felt the crushing weight of utter defeat, entirely unaware that he had just been handed the greatest escape of his life. In the parking lot, the freezing morning air hit his face, and the sheer panic of impending bills and a lost health insurance policy threatened to swallow him whole. He got into his car, gripped the steering wheel, and finally let the tears fall. Tears of rage, of profound betrayal, and of profound fear for Lily's future. But when he drove home and walked into his apartment, he saw his daughter sitting at the kitchen table, fully recovered, happily drawing a picture with her crayons. She looked up, smiled a brilliant, innocent smile, and said, "Daddy, you're home early." In that beautiful, shattering moment, the toxic spell of the corporate world broke completely. Ethan realized that the cardboard box in his hands was not a coffin. It was a lifeboat. He had been killing himself to prove his worth to people who viewed him as nothing more than an expendable line item on a spreadsheet. The truth that no one tells you about the modern workplace is that your company will never love you back. If you drop dead tomorrow, your job will be posted before your obituary is even printed. Ethan spent the next 3 weeks aggressively leveraging the immense skills he had honed in the shadows. Freed from the exhausting politics of Marcus's regime, he secured a high-level remote consulting role that paid him for his output, not his physical presence in a chair. He gained back 2 hours of commuting time every single day, time that now belonged entirely to his daughter. As for his old department, without Ethan silently holding the structural pillars together, Marcus's empire rapidly crumbled. Deadlines were missed, data was botched, and within 6 months, Marcus was quietly asked to resign by the very executives he tried so hard to impress. But Ethan didn't care about the revenge. He had transcended it. He learned the hardest, most vital lesson any professional can ever learn. True dedication is not bleeding for a logo that will replace you without a second thought. True dedication is fiercely protecting your own peace, your own family, and your own soul from a machine designed to consume it. Thank you for walking through this dark corridor with us. If Ethan's story resonated with the silent battles you fight every day, share this to remind others that they are not alone. Until next time, protect your boundaries, because nobody else will. Ethan's harrowing journey serves as a powerful testament to the fragile and often deceptive nature of corporate loyalty. For years, he poured his exceptional talent and relentless work ethic into a company that fundamentally misunderstood the meaning of dedication. Under Marcus's toxic leadership, Ethan's boundaries as a devoted father were weaponized against him, culminating in a deeply humiliating and unjust termination. However, the cardboard box he carried out of that cold office building was not a symbol of failure, but rather a catalyst for profound personal liberation. Stripped of the daily anxieties and performative demands of a hustle-obsessed culture, Ethan discovered the undeniable truth: a corporation will never love you back. By redirecting his unmatched skills toward an environment that valued genuine output over visible suffering, he reclaimed his autonomy and, more importantly, his time with his daughter, Lily. His former department's subsequent collapse only validated his invisible worth. Ultimately, Ethan's story is a stark reminder that true success is not found in sacrificing your well-being for a faceless entity that views you as ultimately expendable. Instead, it is found in the unwavering commitment to your own personal values, your family, and your mental health. The illusion of the corporate family is a trap designed to extract maximum output for minimal emotional return. And breaking free from it is often the first step toward building a truly meaningful and balanced existence.
The modern workplace operates on a purely transactional basis, yet it often manipulates employees into giving unconditional loyalty. The most profound lesson from Ethan's story is that you must never sacrifice irreplaceable parts of your life, your physical health, your mental peace, and your family for a replaceable job. Competence and efficiency should serve your own life goals, not merely feed a toxic manager's ego. Establish firm boundaries. Define your working hours clearly. Do not answer non-urgent emails at midnight or skip personal commitments to prove your dedication. Let your high-quality output speak for itself. Recognize the illusion of the corporate family. Treat your employment as an exchange of services for compensation. Reserve your deepest emotional devotion for your actual family, friends,
and personal passions. Build your own leverage. Continuously develop your skills so that you are never entirely dependent on one toxic employer. Keep your resume updated, build an emergency fund, and maintain a network outside of your current company. Refuse performative productivity. Focus on achieving actual results rather than engaging in the theater of exhaustion. If your current environment penalizes boundaries and rewards sheer suffering, quietly begin planning your exit strategy. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where you felt pressured to choose between your job and your personal boundaries? Please leave a comment below sharing your perspective or experience so our community can read, relate, and learn from one another. If Ethan's story resonated with you, please hit that subscribe button to support the channel and give us the motivation to bring you more impactful stories like this in the future.